and welcome to ET Garage. Today's video is going to be about polyurethane bushings with 75,000 miles on them. Okay, like I was saying, today's video is going to be about urethane bushings. Anyone not familiar with my Corvette, it has over 251,000 miles as of this recording. And I'd say about 75,000 miles ago, I changed out all the bushings to polyurethane. I used prothane bushings, and I did the front and the rear. And sometime earlier in the year, if you've been following my channel, I broke my front leaf spring and had to change that out. Well, I had that out and I had the lower control arm off. I inspected those bushings, and those bushings were still like new, amazingly. These bushings here are for the dog bones. And I'll be showing you them here shortly, but the rear has a lot more articulation in it. And even though I'm not detecting any play or anything, I figured what the heck, that'd make for a good video. I'm curious to see what those are like after 75,000 miles. The rear dog bones and rear suspension in general has a lot more articulation to it and puts a lot more load. Like the A-arms, basically, they just go up and down like this on the front, where the rear has all sorts of oddball angles that gets twisting motion and stuff like that. I mean, the front twists a little too, like under braking, etc. So, but not like the rear does. Like I said, I'm not getting any play in any of the bushings that are on there, but I figured that, you know, these are about, I don't know, less than $60, I think. Something like that, somewhere in that price range for just the dog bones. So I figured I'd check them out, and I should probably check the I don't know if I'm going to check out the spindle rods or the lower control arms, whichever you want to call them. I don't know if I'm going to check those or not. Those are aftermarket, actually. They're not propane. They're another aftermarket, what they call Smart Strut, and I can't remember the brand, but last time I had them off, those were in good shape, so I'm not too worried about them, even though that was some time ago. But these dog bone ones, I'm going to change them out, and it's pretty straightforward. Let me go show you. Okay, hopefully you can see this real good. These items right here, this is the upper dog bone, that's the lower one, and that's basically what needs to come out and come apart. And it's pretty straightforward, really. There's one bolt there, one bolt there, big bolt here. I don't know if you can see that, and then a bigger bolt down there. Seems straightforward, but it's not. Especially if there's a lot of corrosion, getting them off is going to be a real pain. I've had, like I said, these have been off in the past, so these, and when I assembled them, of course I use anti-seize, so I'm not too worried about them. No, I guess the basic thing to do is get them off. I can't remember if I had to move the shock out of the way or not to get this off. I'll find out when I get to it. If I have to, I'll remove it. Same with these. There's actually a couple of different ways to do it. One is to remove those two bolts, or you can remove the bolts that hold this bracket on, and that might actually make it easier. And then remove these bolts on the bench. I might do it that way, because what happens is back here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's kind of goes into the frame. There's an opening in the frame, and if you're not careful, the nut will drop down into that frame. I've actually did that, and I ended up having to fishing it out with a magnet. It's kind of a pain in the butt. But anyway, let's get going on this, I guess. Okay, hopefully you can see all this. Here's the dog bones. I still got to remove them from these brackets, But there is no play in these that I can see, and there's really no wear in them whatsoever. I'm pretty impressed. You got some wear on the side. Now, if you're wondering about like these grease fittings don't come from the factory. That's something I put on, and be honest with you, I don't think it's worth it. Just put good quality grease there. You can use their silicone grease. That's what they recommend. I actually prefer to use synthetic marine grease. That's just my personal preference. One thing I'm noticing though, like this one moves. This one here doesn't want to move at all. Now obviously it had to be moving when it was on the car, otherwise the suspension went up and down. So that's something I got to look into. Might need a spacer in there or something. So let me get these apart. You don't need an impact to do it, but it sure helps. And another thing I should note is that when the first time you take these apart, if your car's like my car, when I originally got it, had 163,000 miles, a lot of corrosion. I basically took the whole suspension apart. It fought me all the way. It didn't come off anywhere as easy as these just came off. There was lots of corrosion on the bolts and nuts, and everything was corroded. Now, if these are the original, obviously it will be different. You'll have to take out the old bushings. What you do is you drill them, just drill around that center bushing right there, and you just drill around there and then knock it out, or if you have a press is even better. Either way, it's molded to this aluminum piece, so you're gonna have to clean the inside of that out, get all that rubber out. But let me get this apart, and hopefully I don't kill myself doing this. Okay. PV blaster. Alright, that's one. Okay. Wow. You can see there's corrosion there. Well, let me get this whole apart. All these parts cleaned up. Now you can see, like I said, this was a part before. You can see all the anti-seize I have on there. That made it a lot easier coming apart, of course. Now this one, the longer one, I believe is the lower one. And that's the one that was seized. And you can see corrosion and wear here on the sides. So, should have been able to move. One thing you got to do is make sure there's plenty of grease here when you do these. Let me get the old bushings out. Now this is where it's good to have like a bench vise. I do have a bench vise. It's in my basement. If I have to, I'll go down there and do that. I may have to. Now, I noticed one thing I noticed is the original Prothane bushings are gold anodized, where these are, I don't know what that is, if that's zinc plating or silver anodized on there. But I'll worry about that here shortly when I get this out. Let me get a socket. Now, if you don't have a bench vise, one way to knock these bushings out. You won't have to do this on the original because they'll be molded in. Those, you, like I said, you just drill out. But if you have the polyurethane ones like this, they don't want to come out. Finally. Wow, that was pretty corroded. I guess I haven't lubed these in a while. And one thing I did was I made a hole in the bushings and lined them up with that Zig fitting. Looking at it now, that hole looks like it actually moved from where the Zig fitting was. This probably wasn't getting any grease. Well, I did grease it. But Now that I got this apart, I'm going to say I'm happy I did. Let's move on. Get this bushing out if I can. Shit. Yeah, you can see where I drilled the hole there, but apparently they weren't lining up. Probably the best thing I could do is probably grind these down if I use that grease fitting and leave a gap. So something to keep in mind if you do a grease fitting like I did. But anyway, you can see where I cleaned up the inside when I took the original rubber out. And only thing to do is get the rest of these apart. Get the new bushings in. I'll get these apart. I'll take these down in my parts washer, wash them up, come back up here and put them together. But let me get that done. Whew. All right, I got everything cleaned up, or as much cleaned up as I'm going to. Originally, when I did my rear and front suspension, I super cleaned everything, and then I painted everything. And like I said, that was 75,000 miles ago. A lot of people like to polish this stuff. If your Corvette, C4 Corvette, is going to be nothing used but for a show car, go ahead, polish them up, but put some type of protective film on them, either clear coat or lots of good protective polish. You don't need these. If it's a show car, you don't need these fittings. In fact, I don't even know if I'll use them anymore, but I did. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me see if I can get a better light. Hopefully you can see that. I did grind them down a little bit on the inside to make a little bit of a gap, so next time if I do use the grease, which I don't know, maybe I will, maybe I won't, the grease will get in there this time. One thing I did notice is like these small bushings, they fit nice in here. The smaller bushings, there's two different sizes. The ones on the that connect to the frame are the smaller ones. The ones that connect to the hub assembly are bigger. But they're like, now that I got these pressed in, they fit snug. But here they're kind of loose. There ain't nothing bad. The grease will take care of that, even if it stays loose. But once they're pressed in, they fit tight. I just got to get grease on these and start reassembling. Reassembling will be more difficult, I imagine, than when I took them apart, because that's just the way things are, I guess. But usually that's how things work. What happens is when I took this apart, the whole, I don't know if you saw it in the video, but the whole suspension, you could see it relaxed and went back, and that's because of all the articulation. So I might have to jack it up. And if this was the stock bushings, where these bushings are basically molded in there and are actually fixed, and the rubber actually flexes, you have to compress your suspension to its ride height and then tighten everything down. I'm not sure how they did that at the factory or not, but that's what you're supposed to do. With the poly bushings, you don't have to. They will articulate freely, so you don't have to worry about that. Let me get these lubed up and get this back together. Okay, the bracket is all together, and as you can see, I put plenty of grease on. And also make sure you get plenty of grease on the sides here. I got to tighten in the bracket. I'm going to get these on first. Actually, it goes that way. Make a note which way your bracket comes off. This lip here will face towards the inside. You can see that lip. One thing to keep in mind, like I said, if you use the propane grease, that's up to you. I'm using this marine grease. I like that. I prefer that better, especially since I drive my car in the winter. If you use the grease that comes with it, do yourself a favor, order yourself a tube of this. They sell a tube separate, or at least they used to, and because these packets, in my opinion, will not be enough. So make sure you have plenty of this. Also, anti-seize. Make sure you use that on your bolts, like these bolts here. I probably put more than I need to, but also make sure you put them around the head too. A lot of people just put them on the thread. You should really put them on the head too. That'll help seal out water from getting in there, and etc., etc. But let me get this thing together. Like I said, and this is, like I said, this will probably be the hard part. So let me get going. Alright, it's all together, and I ended up having to loosen these up, back this bolt out so at the end of the bolt is flush with the nut. This way it will slide into that frame when you go to line this up. And get these two started, this on the knuckle, upper and lower. Then use the long, these come with really long bolts, and I'm guessing the factory made them that way in order to draw this in, just like I ended up doing. I ended up putting those in, drawing it in, and then tightening these and tightening those. And it's this side is all done. Doesn't look pretty because I didn't, polish it or dress it up or repaint it. But I'm in the Northeast. I do drive this year round. I used to keep this all nice and neat under here and for the car shows, and never ever did I see anyone look underneath this car at a car show. So other than personal satisfaction and showing it off to your friends on the internet, getting this all shiny doesn't really matter. But what's important is I got new bushings all lubed up, and hopefully they won't get corroded like that other one did. Let's end this video. Alright, this side is done. I got to do the other side. I'm going to end the video here. The other side is exactly the same as this side, just the other side. It's always good to only do one side at a time. You can go back to the other side and use that as a reference when you put everything back together. But hope this video was helpful. You found out what poly bushings look like after 75,000 miles. Like I said, the fronts, I only had the one lower control arm off, but those were great. They still had plenty of lubrication on them, no signs of any corrosion. It wasn't like the rears. The rears, I guess, take more of a beating. I'll probably go ahead and finish the dog bones on the other side, like I said, and then call it a day. During the winter, I'll probably take the spindle rods off, or lower control arms, smart struts, whatever you want to call them, and do them. The last time I had them off, in one of my videos, I went over it, I lubed them up, and they were in good shape. They weren't showing signs of wear. So, I want everybody to have a great day, and God bless.